da 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 preparing the
White Pony.
In an interview with Teen Voice Webzine in early 1999, Steph Carpenter gave a breakdown of Deftones' writing process. I do about 85% of the music, and not because I'm like, it's my music or anything like that. It's just me and Abe, we jam a lot. And I just come up with a lot of the riffs, stuff like that. And the other 15% is really kinda if someone else brings an idea in or somebody changes what ideas I've already had, you know. And it's not like I don't want to hear anyone else's stuff, just, you know, no one really comes to the plate with a lot of stuff, so I bring it in. Chino does all the lyrics, you know. I never get involved with his lyrics, that would be pointless. I mean, Abe plays drums, I'm not gonna tell Abe how to play a beat. They all think they can play better guitar than me, so they're always trying to tell me how to play a song or whatever. And the greatest is when they tell me I played something wrong even though I made it up. Like, how can I play something I made up wrong? I'm allowed to change it. It's my stuff. For those of us who know what's about to happen, this is one of the most understated yet greatest examples of dramatic irony that we've ever seen in modern rock and metal. But for those who don't know, keep listening. After contributing to both Adrenaline and Around the Fur, it was only right that Frank Delgado finally joined the band. He was born in Los Angeles, but moved to Sacramento in 1993 to contribute as a turntablist for the hip-hop group Socialistic, aka Funk Socialistics. Delgado met Deftones at the same rehearsal space downtown. As a result, they jammed together, which then led to Delgado playing interludes between songs at Deftones concerts. Eventually, he would collaborate on Minus Blindfold and For Real in 1995's Adrenaline album. Later, he contributed to My Own Summer, Around the Fur, Die the Flu, Head Up, and MX on 1997's Around the Fur. Frank spoke to the Tampa Bay Times saying, "I started hanging around these guys and being creative with them with all that I had, which was records. My whole thing was trying to figure out how to utilize it in a different way than what I think people thought a DJ was supposed to be in a rock band." And you know, that's what sets Frank apart from his contemporaries. Many bands of his nu metal, alt metal era had a DJ making scratching sounds, and you know, I love that stuff, and Frank does that stuff, albeit sparingly. But Frank tends to burrow himself into the mix at times where he's almost imperceptible. However, if removed, so much of the texture of the track is gone. Chino spoke of Frank's craftsmanship with Launch in July 2000, saying, "He takes our records and does this kind of thing to it. It's like 3D sounding to me. You can listen to our record on headphones and hear so many different things. Frank knows how to weave in and out of the music, and I think he does it very well. I think it's a good thing when people say they can't hear him." Like a magician hiding in plain sight, Frank's contributions have been celebrated by those with the keenest ear. And when you watch the band live, his contributions are more obvious, which endears him to fans even more. When we first started writing for the album, I'd look for some sort of sound that matched the pitch and tone of the song. Often Chino would hear something I did and use it for a melody. The reason this album sounds different is because of the way we wrote it. It has a certain kind of aura you can't put your finger on. The aura is different to place because it is a diverse and multifaceted project. When folks first heard this album was going to be more mature, they figured all the aggression would be gone. However, there are some songs that went just as hard, if not harder, than songs in their previous albums. It is difficult to describe this album's aura or atmosphere because I'd just be contradicting myself over and over again. It's so different from track to track, but that's what makes this album so special. Believe it or not, the album title and the album art were determined before the album was written. Frank spoke to deftones.com about it. When we came up with the initial idea, we were just sitting around drunk and Chino was like, why don't we call the album White Pony? And we were like, alright. And this is while we were still on the road and hadn't written any songs. So we decided, fuck it. We'll put up a red backdrop like a flag. It's like us putting up our flag and saying, here we are, this is the White Pony, man. You can't fuck with it. You don't even know what it means, but you're gonna want to know just for the reason you're asking is why. And Frank was right. Many interviews wondered about the emblematic design. Chino gave his rationale behind the now iconic album art. The album title and the album cover itself, it's a symbol of our individuality in a way. It's very plain, it's a white pony, and it's just there and it stands on its own. And I sort of look at our band and the music we make, it sort of stands on its own amongst everything else that's going on. There could have been a lot of decisions made to do a lot of what seemed to be easier routes. And we just never seemed comfortable doing that. So what happened was, we just stuck by ourselves, 5 of us in a band. That's the way we look at it. We're all we got, and this is the music we make. And the White Pony title just fit what was going on. Deftones linked up with Black Sabbath to support Sabbath's reunion album tour alongside Pantera from January 25th to February 18th, 1999. Prior to that, they were touring Australia. So from mid-February to the end of May, they went back home to their infamous rehearsal/skate spot called The Spot and began writing material for White Pony. So they wrote some stuff, then they were back on the road for Ozfest from May 27th to July 24th. It was during Ozfest that they debuted their red White Pony flag. After touring for basically 2 years straight for Around the Fur, Chino said writing an album felt like a vacation. But sometimes, you'll go away for a little holiday and end up just in time for a storm. The typical Deftones writing session was thus. Steph made the riff, usually in collaboration with Abe, just as he said in the beginning. Chi adds the bass, sometimes in a dub style. Chino finds the melody when listening to the instrumental, writes the lyrics, and then Frank would be invited to contribute somewhere. This time around, Steph lived in LA and would travel back to Sacramento to write with the band. He and Abe did their normal thing, but because Steph was only writing the same, quote, heavy-ass violent riffs, as Chino put it, no one else was feeling it, so they didn't write on it. In response to this, Steph doubled down and kept writing heavy-ass violent riffs, which everyone continued to, for a lack of a kinder word, ignore. This resulted in a pause of creativity which Chino broke when he decided to pick up a guitar and play chords that had more breath in them with Abe. Chi spoke to Knack.com about this moment, saying, I think it was important for Chino to establish himself as a songwriter, and Steven feeling challenged by it and trying to maintain being the primary songwriter. There was little to no cohesion until the midpoint of the writing process, and then finally, a breakthrough. When we wrote Change, Chino said to Alternative Press in 2000, that was one of those defining songs where we all wrote together. It started out with Stefan and I playing guitar and Frank doing his keyboard thing over it. Right then, everybody joined in. Nobody told anybody else what to do. It all just came out freely. That's when it all started to come together. Steph gave his opinion on this change, when interviewed by Total Guitar. Me and Chino rowed a lot when we were working on White Pony. It was a really abrasive process, and that's because we're both into really different music. Basically, I just wanted to make a heavy metal album, and Chino was like, no way. He's always represented the softer side of Deftones. And with Guitar 1, Steph said this about his relationship with Chino. We shoot each other down left and right. We often verbally assault each other, but not in a hateful way, just to keep each other in line. When we were writing, we said things like, "No, I don't really like that, I'm not gonna play it." There are at least 3 songs on our record that I didn't want to play. But it wasn't because I hated the song. I was just thinking, you're not accommodating what I want to do, so why should I accommodate what you want to do? And that's the way it was from day 1. Herein lay the dramatic irony. Steph was under the impression that he was going to make as heavy an album as he possibly could make, while everyone else was keen on distancing themselves from the nu metal crowd and trying something different. As one would imagine, he was blindsided by this, especially after producing 2 fairly brutal albums. And to have someone mosey into your territory when you've never told anyone else how they should play their instrument, it's natural to feel like this is an infringement on your boundaries, isn't it? Yet, despite all of this conflict and backbiting, about half of the songs on White Pony are Steph songs and half are Chino songs. That aside, Steph was quite gracious and conciliatory when talking about Chino's vocal game on White Pony. Chino's been able to sing like that since the day he got in the band. He just never really believed in himself enough to do it. When it comes to writing songs for our band, everything I write is based on the fact that I know he can sing. Everyone listens to vocals and pays attention to the singer, so knowing that, we should make that part the best that it can be. Despite the archives of interviews where, okay, maybe it's not archives, but it's like despite the several interviews where the members of the band talk about the amount of tension there was at the time between Steph and Chino, when you read more recent interviews, it feels like they're trying to paint a more honest history, or perhaps rewrite history, I don't know. Maybe Steph is right to say that they got along 98% of the time, but if the media put a spin on it back then, I'm sorry, I feel it was courtesy of the band themselves. Nevertheless, Deftones spent their time recording between the record plant in Sausalito, California, and Larrabee Sound Studios in West Hollywood. They did it with the help of someone we perhaps could call an honorary member of Deftones at this point. It was natural for the band to consider someone new to produce an album that was shaping up to be something unique. Terry Date had been their rock for their first 2 albums, but this new direction might have called for someone new. As a matter of fact, it was Terry who encouraged the band to see what it would be like to work with someone else. Remember, Terry was the same guy who wanted nothing to do with the band's cover of the Smiths' "Please, Please, Please Let Me Get What I Want." If the band was migrating from metal, even if just a little bit, maybe it was a good idea to find a different producer after all. So, Jerry Harrison and Rick Rubin were consulted. When Chino met with Rick, he didn't think Rick understood his vision, and their work style didn't complement each other anyway. And ultimately, you can't say no to family, can you? So when Terry was eventually requested, he obliged to help the boys out. Chi said of Terry, "He's like family now, we just love him, and he's the only person that could have gotten us through this album, motivated us, and pushed us through this album." When Deftones made the journey to Sausalito in August 1999, one source claimed they had about 2/3 of the album's worth of songs written. Another source says half, but Korea was essentially done. As for living arrangements, the band stayed in houseboats while Chi and his family stayed in a nearby apartment. Frank Maddox, the art director for White Pony, had come to the plant to show the band what he'd been working on. He also got to listen to what the band had come up with thus far, and was blown away. As a result, he obtained the sonic material necessary to come up with the artistic material. While he wasn't the one who designed the iconic pony, Frank was the one who suggested to make it small and put it in the bottom right-hand corner. Stroke of genius in my opinion. The reissued album art has the outline of a big pony, but ironically, it hits me less. As fate would have it, Tony Hawk Pro Skater 1 got released right at the end of August. I believe it was the last day of August. So if they couldn't skate the half pipe back home, they could skate in virtual reality. Naturally, Terry got pissed. Terry would come in furious, remembers Abe to Louder Sound. His glasses would be all steamed up and he'd be like, "God damn it, get in there." Terry said to The Ringer, "I think the best decision the studio owner at the plant ever made was to put Tony Hawk on a big screen in the lounge. There were so many hours of studio time burned because we weren't doing a damn thing." After their stint at the record plant, they moved operations to Lara B Sound Studios in West Hollywood in the first week of 2000. Here, Chino would finally record his vocals and Terry would mix. The band moved into a mansion in the Hollywood Hills that might have been Greystone Mansion, aka Doheny Mansion, where the murder-suicide of Ted Doheny and his secretary Hugh Plunkett took place in 1929. Chino spoke to Rock Sound saying, "One morning I woke up and I saw something floating in the left-hand corner of the room. I was like, nah, that shit ain't fucking there. So I shut my eyes. But when I looked again, I saw the same thing, but it had moved a little bit. I couldn't tell what it was, but I could tell it was looking at me. I had this uncontrollable feeling, so I fucking stood and walked out of the room. I didn't really tell anyone about it until Abe told me a story about the same kind of shit. The guys from Orgy were staying at the house before us, and when they heard we'd stayed there, they were like, 'Did any crazy shit happen to you?' And they started telling us what they'd experienced. Abe said of the house, they had named that house the Devil House. Something was definitely there. I would wake up in the middle of the night with pressure on my lungs. It was the worst. It was a frightening place. And by the end of their stay, Abe ended up being stabbed. By a ghost? No, not by a ghost. He forgot that he had stuck a double-ended knife out of the fireplace he was using as a headboard when he jumped into bed one night. But you know, this was just one of a series of wild nights Deftones enjoyed in Los Angeles. "You're in Hollywood doing crazy shit," said Frank. "You're at speakeasies at 5 in the morning, out in Compton. Shit just happens, you know what I mean? We were fucking young, having a fucking blast, doing a bunch of blow, drinking, partying," Abe confessed. "Lots of cocaine, tons of it. But it was not everyone in the band." Remember how Frank had said that the aura of the album was difficult to put your finger on? Well, one way to describe the album is like a combination of sex and violence. I've heard it even being called sleazy, and yet it's so much more sophisticated than anything the genre had to offer. So, White Pony was officially released on June 20th, 2000, Chino's birthday, but it was leaked on April 26th. As you're probably aware, this was a time when music leaks began to occur. As disheartening as this was for the band at first, they actually came to enjoy the positive feedback that they got from their tracks. They would also enjoy massive success commercially, critically, and culturally. The album kicks off with a "Fuck I'm Drunk" as Fitzgerald dodges the cops, then pops the trunk for our protagonist. Is this the sex or the violence part? Why not both? The name means witch or sorceress and was inspired by 90s Brazilian sex symbol Joana Prado. Apparently on her TV show, dudes competed for a chance to drink out of her belly button. The working title for this song was New Murderer. Digital Bath continues on the theme of sex and violence. Chino. It was probably 5 in the morning, we were still up partying, and I just pictured this whole scenario of having this girl, bringing her downstairs and taking a bath and like, out of nowhere, just reaching back and electrocuting, basically throwing some kind of electrical device in the bathtub, and then taking her out of the bath, drying her off and putting her clothes back on. Chino was so moved by the song, which at the time had the working title Night Rider, that he jumped into the band's rented Mustang convertible and hit the road with the song on tape. He said to Revolver, "It was at night and I was just driving through Hollywood. I was just thinking to myself, this sounds futuristic to me. There's little elements of things that I love, but it sounds like something new. And we just made it an hour ago." So there was a feeling of accomplishment. I sort of felt like, yeah, we're onto something. Because Chino's lyrics on this album are not about something specific in his life, sometimes understanding his lyrics are difficult simply because no one can know what they mean. Grammy Award winning Elite has two schools of interpretation. One is that the song is a warning to those who strive for fame, that vanity will do you in. The other is that menstruation is a thing. Stefan came up with that riff and then I just attacked it, Chino said. I did what I knew he would love and came up with some scathing aggression. Scott Weiland lends his voice in the chorus of Prescription Queen. Weiland's manager was desperate to get him back into music and away from drugs after a stint in prison for heroin possession. Honestly, first time I heard this, I had no idea it was him in the harmony of the chorus, but he was awesome, as he always was. Shout out to Abe and Frank for this one. I think they stole the show. By the way, do you say Prescription Queen or RX Queen? Despite knowing that RX means prescription, I only ever call it RX Queen. Is that weird? Hopefully not. It was rumored that this song's working title was Ice Skates. Now, I could have sworn I heard Chino say that Streetcar reminded him of Deftones' Adrenaline era, but he did call it a classic Deftones song. Listen to the song, it's hard to disagree, but I couldn't find the article of him saying that it sounded like a Adrenaline era song. Maybe it was in like a video interview or something. But, in the song, he fancies himself as Morrissey as he sings over the top and he totally nails it. Teenager was written by a 15-year-old Chino Moreno about a date that left him heartbroken. He was living with his grandparents in Arizona at the time. Now, you'd be forgiven for thinking the production was largely down to Frank, but it was actually DJ Crook who did the sampling on the track, which is why it was initially a Team Sleep track. The guys from Idiot Pilot did a cover of the track, and Chino decided to record a version with them, and you can find it on Deftones' B-Sides and Rarities album. Hopefully, the people over at Maverick didn't fire their copyright though. Misspelling party in Knife Party was an honest mistake, but it sort of made the track more iconic. Rodleen Getsix's appearance on the track is nothing short of serendipity. Nuno from Deftones World got the inside scoop from Rodleen herself. I came to Lara B Studios in West Hollywood that week to check out Rob Wasserman and to master his solo album with Dave Aaron. These were the same studios that the Deftones were recording their album in. Up in the lounge above the studios, someone played a recording of mine from a show I had recently done. Just me and my guitar. Anyway, the guys heard my voice and asked me to sing on the album. I didn't know what to expect. The Deftones were new to me and I didn't even know what kind of music it was gonna be. Guys, she thought it was a reggae or a ska band. But honestly, can you blame her? Rodleen continues. We were up in that lounge at Lara B and Chino asked if I wanted to sing on this song. As he began to play it, I said, let's just go down in the studio right now and see how it hits my soul. The voice came out in this operatic scream zing. Never before had I known it. The track was initially titled Knife Party at the Nico and was later revealed to be Maverick's preference for the lead single. And honestly, you can probably understand why. It's a killer track. Then we have the song that was initially titled White Pony. It's Korea. What's it about? While Chino confessed to it being an abstract song, perhaps the parts that weren't so abstract were the chicks and blow. The song was completed early, and as a testament to this, it debuted at Ozfest 1999. Passenger featured Tool / A Perfect Circle / Pucifer lead Maynard James Keenan. Apparently, the song's working title was Timbaland. Here's Chino on how the song came about and Maynard's various roles in its creation. We didn't plan on having any guests on the record. Honestly, when he first started working with us, he wasn't supposed to sing with us. He was just working on the arrangements, riff structures, time signatures, and things like that. He came in and we started working on this one song in particular, and he just grabbed the microphone and started singing along to it, and my jaw just dropped. All of a sudden, our band sounded like Tool. It was just crazy. Then probably 2 months later, we went in to record the album, and I went in to record the vocals on it, and I just kept hearing his voice, this reoccurring melody with his voice coming over it. So I called him and asked him if he wanted to come down and sing on the record, and he had no problem with it. Once he came in, I gave him sort of what I wanted the song to be about, and he wrote a couple of ideas down, and the next day he came in with all the lyrics written all out with blank spaces where my lyrics were supposed to be. Apparently, Chino told him he wanted to create a scenario of being in a car and being taken for a drive when you don't really know what's going on. Continuing. He's very professional like that. He wants everything set perfectly, which is the complete opposite to the way that I write. So it was cool. And then I went in and did my vocals over it, and it just seemed that our voices blended together pretty good. Change in the House of Flies is symbolic in a few ways. For starters, it was the song that galvanized the members of the band together after discord set in when Chino started to step into Steph's territory. But it all worked out because when Terry heard it, he knew they had a hit. This is why the band pushed for this to be the lead single. To date, this is Deftones' most successful single. It's been featured on the Queen of the Damned soundtrack to Alias to American Dad. In terms of Billboard mainstream chart success, it wasn't as great as I expected, but there was a chart that I did not remember or expect Deftones to ever grace. On Monday, July 31st, 2000, Change debuted at number 8 on TRL. It would bounce on and off the countdown a few times, but it was on TRL for 8 days and got as high as number 7. Now, allow me to put this into context. The Deftones fandom got this song on the same chart as Britney Spears, NSYNC, Backstreet Boys, and Eminem. Their contemporaries were Incubus's stellar Rock the Party by POD and Papa Roach's Last Resort. That is a monumental achievement to me because this was a band that was done with anything remotely pop. But the groove of this track, it was just undeniable. The song that was initially titled Flint Eastwood really hit the big time. Of the song itself, Chino said, it's a metaphorical song. You could take it in the literal sense of me watching someone turn into a fly and taking them home with me and pulling off their wings and laughing. It spawns from me being a complete asshole and getting the complete repercussion for it by having my life taken away. The title, Pink Maggot, comes from a lyric from Kool Keith aka Dr. Doom's song, No Chorus, so the working title was Pink Maggot. And while No Chorus is about calling out whack rappers for how lame they are, this was different. Admittedly, there was still sex, violence, and a drugged up haze about the song, but Pink Maggot was actually about instilling confidence. Chino. It starts off really spacey and freaky with just guitars, vocals, and turntables. Then it turns into just me and ends up a triumphant anthem about being on top of the world and feeling like the coolest kid in school. The song is meant to be triumphant. I'm trying to spread a little confidence. Lots of artists try to make songs for the kids who are tormented in school. Don't be ridiculed. Become the leader of your surroundings. Confidence is one of the most important things in life. If you are confident, you can do whatever you want. This is actually the vibe I get from this song and its mini maggot offspring, Back to School, which was on the re-release of White Pony. And yeah, okay. I get that they disliked giving into the pressure from Maverick for more radio tunes, but it's a good song. It's a fucking good song that carries the same ethos as Pink Maggot. For the kids who needed something a bit more accessible before getting into the spacey, introspective, and complex stuff the album would later provide, hey man, this is a great access point. Finally, we have the bonus track off the limited edition of White Pony, The Boys Republic. Chi plays a didgeridoo in the intro before the rest of the instruments kick in. Lungs are a strange but cool motif that Deftones constantly revisits. It was on MX, it was on Crenshaw, and it's here again. They love car shit and they love lungs. As for what the song means, well, that's a mystery. Dude wasn't trying to write anything specific, remember? His voice and his words almost function like instruments in that way, almost. Here's Chi on Chino's lyrics. Chino is an amazing lyricist. I think the difference between a good artist and a great artist is the ability to make something that's applicable to everyone. I think that Chino's lyrics are open-ended enough that they might mean something for you. Kids come up to him all the time. This song, it changed my life, and this is what it means to me. And he's like, oh, alright. And maybe that's not particularly what it meant to him, but if you're a good artist, then maybe everybody can get something different out of it, because we are all intrinsically different as people. If you make something that's worthwhile, it's something that everyone can make applicable to themselves, something they can make their own. I think that Chino has that ability. He's a very talented lyricist, which is good. If he wasn't a good lyricist, well, maybe we would step in and do something about it. Yeah, I 100% believe Chi when he said that. After all, he was the one who had the bachelor's degree in English. He was the poet. Ever listen to Bamboo Parachute? Yeah, it'll do your head in. I think Chi's words here also capture how people approach White Pony. Although it was critically acclaimed, there were some people who didn't feel it or didn't feel it when it was first released, and that's fair. But for those who enjoyed it or would come to enjoy it later, it's a lot like what Frank said in the beginning. Who can really put a finger on what this album is? It's so diverse that it stretches the imagination of what one thought was sonically compatible, especially if you enter the genre from the metal, grunge, shoegaze, or hip-hop gateway. The lyrical and musical themes of sex, drugs, and violence are intrinsically tied to the ideas of liberation, conflict, transcendence, and love. Of course, cerebral topics like these would mean different things to different people. It's only natural. For me, this album represents chaos and one's ability to harness it. We begin in the trunk of a car, to then killing significant others with rogue toasters in a bathtub, to hearing vocoded screams, to then cruising, to then abusing drugs, to then suffer in the solitude of adolescence, to wielding weapons, to abusing drugs, to cruising, to unnerving rest, to confidence with the light of Neptune filling our lungs. I think being a part of the 20th anniversary watch party really cemented that notion. As well as remembering that I'm not alone in this pandemic, as I enjoyed it with tens of thousands of other fans. The sharp turns along this highway are enough to throttle you out of the fucking window. But if you strap into this album, you'll arrive safely at your destination, but forever transformed. Thanks for watching.